19. Druhas rule over mortals more than mortals rule over them. It was because of their abundance and their power to do evil, that Jehovah commanded his chosen to marry amongst themselves, and to withdraw from other peoples, and make themselves a separate and exclusive people, that they might not be inhabited with Druhas. 20. When a mortal dieth, and he had dominion over his Druhas, not only his spirit will rise to the first resurrection, but his Druhas also, whereupon they are all delivered into light. 21. When a mortal dieth, and his Druhas had dominion over him, then his spirit becometh a Druj also, and he becometh one with them, fastening on whoso cometh in the way. But if it be in a house and no mortal cometh, upon whom they can fasten, then they remain in that house. And here they may remain a year or 10 years or 100 years, in darkness, knowing nothing, doing nothing, until other angels come and deliver them, which is often no easy matter, requiring bodily force to carry them away. 22. Jehovah gave certain signs unto both angels and mortals, whereby it shall be known both on earth and in heaven which is master over the other, a mortal or his Druhas, and, consequently, such matter determineth to what place the spirit of a man will most readily fall after death. 23. If the mortal cannot control his habit for intoxication, or gluttony, or avarice, or debauchery, or laziness, or lying, or hypocrisy, preaching what he practiseth not, or sexual indulgence, or vengeance, or anger, or tattling mischievously, then is he, indeed, a victim in the hands of Druhas, and at the time of his death, he becometh one with them. 24. For if he have not power to rule in such matters whilst he is in the mortal world, he will be no stronger by the loss of his corporeal body. 25. If the mortal, on the other hand, shall have risen to control himself over these habits and desires, then will he be indeed, at the time of death, already entered into the first resurrection, and the Druhas, if he have any, will be delivered also. 26. And not the words and professions of either mortals or Druhas, nor their prayers, nor religious rites and ceremonies are of any value unto them, but by the works and behavior of mortals are all things known and proven. 27. So that Jehovah's high-raised gods but need pass over a corporeal city once, to determine whether it be in resurrection or declension. And such gods put their angel laborers to work, sorting them as a mortal would his cattle. 28. And if a city be badly cast in Druhas, dragging mortals down to destruction spiritually, then the angels inspire such mortals as are in the way of resurrection to move out of the city, and after that they cast the city in fire and burn it down. 29. And whilst it is burning, and the Druhas distracted with the show, the angels of power come upon them and carry them off, hundreds of millions of them. And the mortals are thus cleared of them that would have bound them in darkness and death. 30. In this matter the infidel cursed Jehovah because the houses are burned, for he judgeth matters by the things his soul was set upon. He saith, What a foolish God! How wicked to burn a city! 31. For he understandeth not that all things are Jehovah's, and that his gods under him work not for man's earthly aggrandizement, which is the curse of his spirit, but they work for his spiritual resurrection in their own way, according to the Father's light in them. 32. To accomplish the resurrection of the Druhas dwelling with mortals on the earth, had Lika, son of Jehovah, appointed Adiesonitis, with his 12 generals, very gods in wisdom and power, each one to a certain division of the earth. Chapter 22. 1. Jehovah spake to Lika, saying, These are my ways, reveal thou me unto them. They that know me not, shall be made to know me, my labours shall rise up before them, and their understanding shall be opened. 2. They shall know what I mean when I say I will destroy or I will build up. I have heard man in his vanity, that judgeth me. His eyes are on the earth only, and in houses and riches. Because I take them away from him, he complaineth against me. 3. I gave man an example in his own child that delighteth in sweets, and idleness, and vain pleasures. Man taketh these from his child, saying, Behold, they are not good for thee, save in great temperance. 4. Wherein have I injured thee, O man? Wherein destroyed I aught that contributed to thy spirit? Wherein have I suffered destruction to come upon thee, whilst thou followedst my commandments? Why shalt thou complain because I laid great cities in ashes? Sawest thou the millions of Druhas thou wert holding down in darkness by thy evil habits? 5. I am not in anger, nor pull I down, nor burn I up any place in a passion. As thou goest forth to destroy a row of houses to stay a great conflagration, shall the people murmur? For thy hand is stretched forth to do a good work for the whole city. 6. My heavens are magnified cities, and when a mortal wing offendeth, behold, I clip it short. They are all mine, and none can question my authority with mine own, which I wield for the resurrection of the whole. 7. Thou hast wept because of the destruction of the books of great learning of the ancients, but thou knowest not thine own words. Saw I not, O man, that thou wouldst never wean thyself from the doctrines of the dark ages if the books of great learning were not destroyed? 8. In all ages of the world thou hast been bound to the ancients, thou art forever searching backward for wisdom, and to the angels of the dead who pretend to be ancients. I behold the latter, and that they are Druhas. 9. I send wise angels down to them to deliver them out of darkness. And they come and bear the Druhas away from thee, for thine own good and theirs. My wise angels suffer mortals to burn up the books of the ancients, for I command them to make thee open thine understanding to the living present. 10. Jehovah spake to Atiasonitis, and through him to the 12 gods of deliverance, saying. 11. Go forth, my son, in wisdom and power. Thy labor requireth great strength and stratagems. For thou shalt find the Druhas fast bound to mortals and to mortal habitations, houses. As a drowning man clingeth to a log, so cling the Druhas to mortals. As a delirious man, mad with drunkenness, flieth in fear from his best friends, so will the Druhas fly from thee, and thy hosts who shall attempt to deliver them. 12. They will inspire their mortals to dread an innovation of the ancient doctrines. Yea, the twain, not knowing it, will bind themselves together with great tenacity. 13. But thou shalt deliver them apart nevertheless, by stratagem, or persuasion, or with a strong hand. And when thou hast them separate, thou shalt surround the Druhas with flames of fire, and carry them off to the boats, which are bulwarked with fire. And thou shalt deliver them in the places my son, Usamus, hath ready prepared for them. 14. Thou shalt not only deliver the Druhas, but cause mortals to hate them. 15. Mortal kings shall issue edicts against magicians and prophets and seers and priests, and the consultation of spirits shall come to an end. And man on the earth shall turn to his own soul, which is my light within him, and he shall cultivate it and learn to think for himself. 16. Atiasonitis prepared a record to give to mortals, and it was by inspiration so given. And the nature of the record was to teach mortals to be guarded against Druhas, and know who was afflicted with them. 17. This, then, that followeth is said record, even as it standeth to this day in the libraries of heaven, to wit, 18. The man that saith, I pity my neighbors, they are surrounded with Druhas. 19. The man that saith, fools only believe in obsession. 20. The man that saith, there is no all person. 21. The man that saith, my way is wisdom, thine is wicked. 22. The man that saith, let no one dictate to me. I will have nothing but liberty to the uttermost. 23. The man that saith, as the priest thinketh, so do I. 24. The man that saith, that thou hadst my knowledge. 25. The man that saith, the ancients were wiser than we. 26. The man that saith, the ancients were fools. 27. The man that saith, whoso seeth not as I do is a heathen. 28. The man that saith, whoso worshippeth not my God is wicked. 29. The man that saith, wisdom is book learning. 30. The man that saith, there is no wisdom in books. 31. The man that saith, my book is sacred, it containeth the sum of all revelation and inspiration. 32. The man that saith, there is no inspiration, nor words thereof. 33. The followers of the ancients only. 34. He who will have nothing to do with the ancients. 35. He who ignoreth rites and ceremonies and prayers. 36. He who dependeth on rites and ceremonies and prayers. 37. Whoso denieth the ever-present person. 38. Whoso followeth the counsel of angels or men. 39. Whoso will not learn from the counsel of men and angels. 40. Whoso feeleth prayers and confessions to be good for others, but not necessary for himself. 41. Or saith, I will lead and supervise, be thou my servant. 42. Or saith, behold my rights. 43. Or, behold my earnings. 44. Or, behold my possessions. 45. Or talketh of himself and his experiences. 46. Or tattleth of others. 47. Or judgeth his brother, or criticizeth him. 48. The self-righteous, who saith, behold me, I am holy. 49. Or who desireth not new light, or saith, the old is good enough. 50. Whoso laboureth for himself only. 51. Whoso laboureth not for others in his wisdom and strength. 52. That seeketh his own ease. 53. That considereth not others' welfare more than his own. 54. The hypocrite preaching one way and practising another. 55. That speaketh not openly his doctrines, lest his words profit not his earthly means and associations. 56. Atiasonitis said, for these are all as much under the bondage of Druhas as is the drunkard, or harlot, or murderer. And after death their spirits float into the same harder of darkness. Chapter 23. 1. When Atiasonitis' generals and their hosts went through Vindhu and Japheth and Arabanya, they concerted with the gods who had in charge the inspiration of Capilla, Moses and Chine. And not only did the angel generals remove the Druhas from mortals, but inspired mortal kings and queens in those great divisions of the earth to issue edicts against magicians and priests who consulted with spirits. 2. Jehovah had said, it shall be a testimony in the latter days unto the inhabitants of the earth of my proceedings, not with one division of the earth only, but with all places. For they shall in after years search history and find that in the same era in these three great divisions of the earth the kings and queens issued edicts against spirit communion. And this fact shall be testimony of my cycle of bond, wherein man shall understand that I come not in one corner of the earth only, and to one people only, but that I have them all in my charge, as a father that knoweth his own children. 3. Neither give I unto them the same aspirations, for one I send westward to circumscribe the earth, one I build up with a multitude of languages, and a multitude of gods, and the third one I build up without any god save myself. And they shall understand that where there are many languages there are many gods worshipped, where there is one language there is only one worshipped, even I, the Great Spirit. 4. For in Cosmon I will bring them together, and these diversities shall be as a key to unlock the doctrines and languages of times and seasons long past. 5. Man living away from other men becometh conceited in himself, deploring the darkness of others, and great nations become conceited of themselves and their doctrines. 6. Each one of the great peoples saying, Behold yonder barbarians. I was the chosen in his especial care. Those others are only heathens, and have not been worthy of the Great Spirit's concern. 7. But in this day I plant the seed of my testimony, which shall come up and blossom and bear fruit in 3,000 years. 8. Antiesonitis and his generals, with their millions of angel hosts, cleared off the Druhas of the earth, the angels of darkness. They extended east and west and north and south, around all the earth, in all the divisions thereof, into every nook and corner. 9. Day and night Antiesonitis and his armies labored, ceased not nor rested, but in good method went right on, filling all the lowest place of heaven with their transport boats of fire. 10. And the boats sped hither and yonder without ceasing, loaded in their ascent with the screaming, frightened Druhas, all under guard, and duly preserved against accident or harm by the wise angels over them. 11. Some Druhas were easily captured and carried away, some weak, helpless and harmless, but hundreds of millions of them mad, and most desperate, some evil, fearful in desperate oaths, and foul talk, and dangerous withal. 12. But others were most pitiful in their love to linger with their mortal kindred, mothers, whose children dwelt on the earth, and children spirits, whose mothers dwelt on the earth. To separate them and carry away such Druhas was a most heart-rending task, requiring God-like souls to accomplish it. 13. Jehovih had said, As a mortal mother will cling to the mortal body of her dead child, till her friends must tear them apart, the while all souls who look on are broken-hearted because of her love, even such is the bond betwixt the spirit of the dead and the mortal yet left behind. 14. But when my wise angels look upon them, and perceive they are carrying each other down in darkness, then shall they be torn asunder, and the spirit shall be taken away and provided for ultimate resurrection, and only permitted to visit the mortal kin under due guardianship. 15. On the battlefields of the earth were hundreds of millions of spirits in chaos, still fighting imaginary battles, not knowing their bodies were dead, knowing naught but to curse and fight, roving over the battlefields, and would not away, save by capture and being carried off. 16. Thus did Antiesonitis and his mighty hosts clear the earth. But of their great labors and wonderful adventures 1,000 books might be written, and thousands of heroes singled out, whose great achievements overwhelm one's belief because of the manifested love and power. 17. And yet not much less were the labors and adventures of Oahspe in Oahspe and her 6 heavenly places, where his Etherean hosts labored unceasingly, preparing places, and keepers, and nurses, and physicians, and teachers for the delivered Druhas, the thousands of millions. 18. Jehovih said unto Oahspe, Thou shalt assort the Druhas, the peaceful to themselves, the dumb to themselves, the mad, the chaotic, and all other of my afflicted ones, provided sections and places for them. And teachers and nurses and physicians, for they shall be delivered out of darkness also. Yea, every one of them shall become as a star of glory in heaven. 19. And Oahspe and his gods developed the 6 heavens of Oahspe, established places for the tens of millions of Druhas, and provided order and discipline, and altars of worship, and schools, and colleges, and factories, and all things whatsoever required in a primary heaven. Chapter 24. 1. Jehovih spake to Lika, saying, Behold, the end of dawn draweth near, go thou once more around about the earth and her heavens, and examine into the labor of thy gods. And thou shalt take with thee thy Rapon hosts, and a sufficient number of heralds and attendants, and such musicians and messengers as thou desirest. 2. And when thou art come to Yatan, my subjective heaven, thou shalt halt a while with Kaparos, and re-establish it in greater holiness and efficiency. For this is mine only subjective heaven in the regions of the Red Star. 3. Behold, the spirits of those that die in infancy call out to me, saying, Tell us, O thou Creator, how is it with the earth? How is it with mortals who dwell on the earth? What do they toil at? Have they schools and hospitals and factories, like unto ours? Have mortals mishaps and trials? And have they roadways, and oceans of water on the hard earth? 4. How can these things be, O Jehovah? Why is it that mortals cannot go down into the earth and into the bottoms of their oceans, even as we do in the heavens? 5. How didst thou create us alive in the earth? What was the place like? Why do mortals carry around with them such earth houses, bodies? Cannot they go in them and out of them at pleasure? 6. What do mortals mean, O Jehovah, by mortal life and mortal death? Doth the clay and stone and water they dwell in the earth body have life and death? What do they mean by, this is mine and that is thine? 7. Shall every one retain his own body? How do the earth bodies grow? Do they eat clay and stone? And water? Where do they get their blood? And do they eat hair, that they may have earth hair? 8. Why is it that they bring not up their bodies with them when they are dead? Wear they clothes over the spirit body only, or over the earth body also? 9. Great are thy works, O Jehovah. Take me to Yatan, thy great subjective heaven. We would learn by figures in pantomime the illustrations of the earth. We would learn by thy panoramic heaven what mortals do, how they live and what their schools are like, how they have contrived to teach the corporeal senses by corporeal things, how their boats are made and propelled, how their vehicles travel along upon the solid earth. 10. Jehovah said, for which reason, O Lika, thou shalt see to it that Yatan be perfected unto this instruction, as well as to arouse from stupor the spirits of the dead who desire not to raise up from the earth. 11. Lika told the Rapon hosts Jehovah's words, and he also gave command to his chief marshal to provide the necessary otevan with officers, heralds, musicians and messengers. 12. Accordingly, as soon as all things were in readiness, Lika committed the throne of Jehovah, in Theovrakistan, to his vice-god, and Lika and the Rapons, with their attendant hosts, departed on their journey. 13. Now, since the time of Lika in the plateau of Theovrakistan, it had become habited by thousands of millions of angels, and they were high in the grades. 14. So that the officers of selection were already preparing them by the millions for brides and bridegrooms to Jehovah. And there were thousands of heavenly cities besides Yoganakaktra, which were now in beauty, gaiety, refinement and delight, with music, and rites and ceremonies most magnificent. 15. Then there were officers over these officers, whose place it was to sort and arrange the inhabitants of cities, and others over these for each 144 cities, and yet another over these officers, and he was called Marshal of Theovrahkistan. And he was of the same rank as the marshals of the hosts of Lika, conferring with the marshal-in-chief of Jehovah's throne. Chapter 25. 1. Jehovah said to Lika, finish thy visit and thy inspection, my son, in all the places of Hara on the earth, leaving the land of Japheth to the last. And thou shalt go thither, at the time of Chine's resurrection, and descend with thy ship and take him up from the earth. 2. And thou shalt bring him with thee to Yoganakaktra, where he shall remain the few days that dawn remaineth, and when thy hosts ascend to Etheria thou shalt take Chine with thee and make thy home his home until such time as he may be taught the ways and powers of the higher heavens. 3. For since his corporeal life is a sacrifice for the resurrection of men, he shall receive a special care and assistance in heaven. 4. Lika had been previously informed by the god of Chine as to the time Chine would die, and be burnt up, with his ashes scattered to the four winds, and the regathering up of a corporeal form of Chine, and the 7 days' duration thereof. So Lika shaped the course of his otevan, according to the instruction of his messengers, who had been appointed for that purpose, so that he should reach the field in time to raise up Chine before the multitude. 5. The god of Chine had prophesied to mortals through his ward that a fire ship would descend from heaven on a given day, and take Chine up to heaven. 6. Accordingly a great multitude of mortals were assembled in the ash field, where they cast the ashes of the dead, watching for the heavenly ship. 7. Of which matters Lika had been previously informed by his messengers, and Lika had in turn informed the god of Chine the time he would appear with the ship, that he might cause Chine to walk in the midst of the field and so be caught up. 8. And all these matters were carried out to the hour and minute, in the hands of these great gods. And Lika caused the fire of the ship to be made visible to mortals. And the size of the ship was 10 times larger than the field of the dead, so that when the people beheld the light of the ship they feared and trembled, and many of them fell down bewailing that the world was coming to an end. 9. And God caused Chine to walk out in the field, and Lika sent down a whirlwind and took him up into the ship, in presence of tens of thousands of mortals assembled. 10. And Lika bore his course now for Yoganakaktra, for the end of the dawn of Bon was at hand. Chapter 26. 1. Lika sent messengers to all his gods and lords, to install their successors, and to bestow them, after which the gods and lords were to report in Theovrakistan ready for the cyclic resurrection. And he commanded them to bring their Etherian hosts with them, save such as chose to volunteer to remain the next dan of 200 years. 2. Lika had previously sent word by his swift messengers to Etheria, to Lissa, goddess of Tinakak, in Etheria, next to Haugil. And he said unto Lissa, my resurrection will be 8 links, each one equal to 8,000 million brides and bridegrooms. Send thou a cowpon to deliver them. 3. Lissa sent word back to Lika, saying, O Jehovah, I am delighted with the command of thy son, Lika, chief of Vetapuisa. I will deliver the chain of cowpon. 4. Then Lissa gave her commands in Tinakak, to have her builders construct the cowpon, and she also set her officers to work selecting such hosts as she would need for her great undertaking. For she had been notified in sufficient time, for it was a matter of great magnitude even in Etherian realms. 5. And so perfectly were Lissa's commands carried out that not one day's time too much or too little was wide the mark. And then she embarked with her hosts for the Red Star, the Earth, with her 1,000 million trained resurrectionists, on her long journey, 20,000 million miles. 6. Jehovah had said, "Carry far my brides and bridegrooms, make them know the magnificence of the heavens I have created. House them not together in a small corner. Let them feast their souls on the splendors of my great heavens." 7. In the meantime Lika and his hosts in Theovrakistan were getting ready for the ceremonies and for the ascension. 8. The gods, with their hosts, were now coming in from every quarter of the lower heavens, bringing in their harvests and quartering them in the places allotted by the marshals. 9. Most conspicuous and beloved of all was Ahura. Next to him were the 5 true gods, Anain, Injek, Inlay, Inol and Inyith, with their heavenly hosts restored to them, for it was through these 5 gods that the 3 mortals, Capilla, Moses and Chine, had delivered the faithists of Vindu, Japheth and Arabanya. These 5 gods had in 5 years changed the mortal dominions and laws of Vindu and Japheth, and sent 4 million faithists on a westward journey round the earth, and had firmly established the All-One in the 4 great divisions of the earth, and had delivered from bondage all the faithists on the face of the earth. 10. Great also was the work accomplished by Atiesonitis, and by Usamis, and by the gods that had delivered the hells and the knots, and by many others. So good and great were the works of them all, that a history of any one of them in the 5 years' labor, would make a book that a man could not read in a lifetime. 11. And they had left successors to carry out what they had founded, so that all the lower heavens were in order, system and discipline, such as had not been for 2,000 years. 12. The Druhas of the earth were removed away from mortals, the battlefields of the earth were cleared of the chaotic spirits slain in wars. 13. So that the whole earth and her heavens were delivered into a new condition, in the way and form of Jehovah's light. 14. And this was the ark of deliverance in Bon. 15. Then descended Lissa with her chain of Cowpon, with her ships of fire stretched wide as the earth. And the hosts of Theovrakistan, the brides and bridegrooms, 64,000 million sons and daughters of Jehovah, stood, waiting, watching, nervous, but filled with inexpressible delight. 16. And they saw the Cowpon coming, knew the mission of the mighty goddess, Lissa, daughter of Jehovah. 17. Arrayed in spotless white, the 64,000 million stood, shuddered at the etheric current, the whirlwind of the higher heavens, stood the exalted affianced of great Jehovah. 18. Nearer and nearer came the mighty sea of Etherean fire, and nearer, till it landed at the plateau of Theovrakistan. 19. Then came forth Lissa, saluting, and, being answered by great Lika, Jehovah's son, proceeded before Jehovah's throne. 20. Then Lissa demanded in the usual form, why she had been summoned in Jehovah's name. Lika also answered in the usual form, to bestow Jehovah's affianced sons and daughters. 21. After this, each of the 5 gods of the earth took their hosts and bequeathed them to Jehovah, through Lissa, his daughter. 22. But so great and grand were the ceremonies that mortal words cannot describe them. And as for the awe and magnificence, together with the music, could they be described to mortals, understandingly, they scarce could live, because of the enchantment. 23. But there is a time, and a limit, and an end to all such matters, and so there was to the labor of Lika, son of Jehovah. The hosts were wed, and they marched aboard the great Etherean ships, the Cowpon. Lika and his hosts went into his own Aravanya. And, as it were, with a thread light, he made fast to the Cowpon, and gave the word, the command to go. 24. Then raised up the mighty seas of fire, the 8 linked Cowpon and the Aravanya. Slowly, steadily moving onward, upward, higher and higher, faster and faster, and still higher. And thus departed Lika with his thousands of millions of appraised sons and daughters of Jehovah. And thus ended the dawn of Bon. End of the Book of Lika, son of Jehovih. Plate 21. The Earth in the Ark of Bon. Showing the Essian position of the earth in the time of Capilla, Moses and Chine. Jehovah said, the time of my Ark of Bon shall be 400 years. And it was so. And at the termination of that period, behold, the earth went into a dark region, and the Israelites, Brahmins and Zarathustrians forsook the higher light, Jehovah, and established kings and rulers, like other nations.